Good afternoon and welcome to the 330 Sports Show. Today is Thursday, August 26th, 2021. I'm your host, Justin Coffin, and we're recording live from the beautiful downtown Youngstown studios. So if you have not been down here, you have to check it out sometime. It is just awesome down here. Each Thursday, I'm going to tell you what's going on the show today. So each Thursday during the high school football season, we are going to bring you Steve Leslie of YSN. He will join us to give his top 5 individual performances from the previous week, and he's going to highlight 5 different matchups for that upcoming week. So week 2 of the high school season is upon us, starting tomorrow. And Steve's going to break down 5 different games. He's going to talk about probably about 10 to 12 different games overall. And as I mentioned, those 5 top performances from the previous week. So that's going to be coming up in just a few minutes here. First, I want to tell you what's happening on our next couple shows and highlight a few things from around the sports world. So the very first thing I want to talk about next Tuesday, we've done a few of these already. We've done Groundhog Day. We've done Happy Gilmore. Next Tuesday, we're going to be bringing you Varsity Blues. Varsity Blues is a 1999 football classic. It was ranked the number 2 movie overall in our football bracket. Ended up getting knocked off by Remember the Titans, but a phenomenal movie. I really have great memories of it because 1999 into the year 2000 was my senior year of high school. So, similar age to the characters portrayed in that movie, but, just your awesome classic MTV type movie, but that has great characters, Texas high school football, all that good stuff. So we're going to bring that to you live on next Tuesday's show at 1 p.m. So look forward to that. We're also on next Tuesday going to have another show for you. This other show, though, is going to be in the evening. It's going to feature the voices of the YSU Penguins. We did this back in early March, late February, because YSU, with that COVID season, played that spring season. I think they played 6, maybe 7 football games in total. But Steve Leslie, Bob Hannon will join us for that. They are the play-by-play voices for YSU football. Really looking forward to that show. They have all the knowledge on YSU football, and they will really, give you a lot of great information. Okay, we are 7 days away, 1 week away from Ohio State kicking off and Youngstown State kicking off. So in honor of the 7th day away, I loaded my top 7 or my top number 7s in Buckeye history. So I put on there 4 different guys: Joey Galloway, Chris Gamble, Ted Ginn Jr., and Dwayne Haskins. Now, Joey Galloway is my first Buckeye that I have like a really, really good memory of. Like, he was just this explosive player in the early 90s. And he sort of caught my attention and really got me loving Ohio State football in the early 90s. As a, 10 to 12, 13-year-old kid, really caught on and just started, watching the Buckeyes week in and week out. The other guy on there, Chris Gamble, was a 2-way player for Ohio State during the national championship year in 2002. He was actually the 2nd leading receiver in the national championship year and played literally every snap almost of the game. I think during the national championship game, he played something like 135 snaps to help beat that juggernaut of a team with Miami. On there also, Ted Ginn Jr., probably the most explosive player in Ohio State history. He actually was recruited as a corner, which I didn't even know until I was doing some research on him. He played a little bit of cornerback as a freshman, but we all remember him as a return specialist, but mostly as a wide receiver for the Buckeyes. He did a fantastic job, and probably, again, one of the most explosive players, if not the most explosive player in Buckeye history. And then finally, Dwayne Haskins. Dwayne Haskins probably going to be the heir apparent to Big Ben in Pittsburgh. So it's going to be hard for me personally to root for him as a Browns fan, but, didn't necessarily work out with Washington. but he's a little bit younger, a little bit more immature. Hopefully, for his sake, it works out for him. But he sort of came in Urban Meyer's last year, Ryan Day, the quarterback coach, and really set the OSU record passing record book on fire, and really, Ohio State has been known predominantly as a run team. That really transformed the Buckeyes into a pass-heavy team. So, he sort of set the standard for new quarterbacks with at least, setting the touchdown mark, yards in a season, stuff like that. So, a lot of great number sevens in Ohio State history. Those were the four that kind of stood out to me. Obviously, Joe Germain, mid to late 90s quarterback, played on maybe the best Ohio State team in 1997 of all time. That team ended up getting knocked off by Michigan State in a big upset, but overall was arguably one of the best teams in Ohio State history. Let's see what else we got on the docket too. I want to share this with you real quick as Ohio State and college football in general is kicking off this coming weekend. Believe it or not, there's a few games on the schedule. There's a Big Ten game on there. Illinois and Nebraska play each other. But looking back, it's been very, very heavily weighted with the major players in these New Year's Six bowl games. So you can see a lot of the familiar faces on there: Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State. You sprinkle in a few other teams, but if you look at the preseason top 5 this year, you have Alabama, Oklahoma, you have Clemson, you got the Buckeyes, and I believe Georgia rounds out the top 5. So a lot of the familiar players. Texas A&M might have something to say about that this year. And we're going to have a full in-depth preview of the college football season coming up next week. So really look forward to that. Another one of our shows, we're going to be talking about the AFC North. Now, I think we're about 17, 18 days away from the Browns and the Steelers and the Ravens and the Bengals kicking off their seasons. There is a Thursday night game that is the traditional start of the season coming up in about 2 weeks from today. But the rest of those teams will be kicking off on Sunday. That is September 12th. So those teams are going to be kicking off in just a little over 2 weeks. So we're getting close. So we will have a preview of, I'm going to kind of call that the Know Your Enemy show, the the AFC North battle. We're going to talk a bunch of other stuff with the NFL, some futures, but I've started to line up some guests for that show that are Bengals fans, Ravens fans, Steeler fans, and Browns fans. And we're going to kind of have a little bit of a roundtable for that, where we can talk from our fan perspective, but also talk about what's your team scared of, what's your team worried about, what's your biggest weaknesses heading into the season, and sort of, so it's not just my commentary and from a biased Browns perspective. I can give you a little bit about what I'm nervous about with the Bengals, what I'm nervous about with the Steelers, what I'm nervous about with the Ravens, stuff like that. So that's what we're looking at there. With that, I saw this pop up and I wanted to share this. And Joe, I want your input on this. So this is the Bill Murray of Youngstown. So on the screen, we got 9 different Bill Murray characters. We got Rogers, Canfield, YSU, South Side, Salem, Boardman, East Side, Poland, and the West Side represented. Now, I looked into, I couldn't figure out all these movie characters. So if anybody watching knows what some of these characters are from, let me know. But from what I could conjure up, I think the Rogers is What About Bob? I think Canfield is represented by Scrooged. YSU is represented by the Royal Tenenbaums. The South Side is represented by Zombieland. Salem, I could not figure out what that character was. I could not figure out who that was. He's sort of he looks almost like a farmer in that. So right. I'm not exactly sure. Boardman's represented by Groundhog Day.
Bill?
Is that you walking around at the Southern Park Mall? Oh man, stepping in a big pothole and get your shoes wet. East Side, Space Jam with the hat backwards. I'm a hat backwards guy, so whatever. I don't know. That might be a little profiling. Poland, I think that's his character from Ghostbusters when he has that like talk show in the second one. And then the West Side is called, it's a movie, I had to look this up. It's called Life Aquatic, where he plays this character, and it's kind of the title name. So, Joe, if you had to, now I know you grew up in Girard, you live in the Boardman area, but you also have a business downtown Youngstown. You also have a business in Struthers, and you kind of are representative of the Youngstown culture. So, looking at those Bill Murray characters, which one represents you on, I don't know, any particular day?
Oh my
What do you
goodness.
think?
Well, see, I'm gonna say like and looking at something like this, Bill's played a lot of different types of characters in
Yes.
his movies.
Yes.
And so I would say my favorite to look at is the West Side. I think the hat does it for me.
Okay.
That gritty iron worker,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
That appeals to me. But then the Boardman one,
Mm-hmm.
the that or the pea coat or the
Yeah.
with the scarf. So I'm gonna go with West Side and Boardman on that
Okay.
stream.
All right. Very good. Yeah. He has a very eclectic group of characters he plays, and that's only 9. We could have
Oh
listed,
heck yeah!
a ton more in there. But
I'm looking for your farmer, by the way. I'm gonna
okay.
answer
All right.
this.
Yeah. If anybody out there or Joe can find it, chime in, because I would love to know that. Now, I gotta guess. Some days I wake up and I feel like the South Side right there, like Zombieland. But I have to say, I guess if I had to represent myself in any way, I'm either going with the Poland or the Boardman character. Now, I obviously grew up in Boardman. I live in Canfield now, but it's kind of like Canfield Boardman. But the Poland Ghostbusters character, I think, is representative of my personality, of kind of like, I try to be funny, but like sometimes don't give a shit, kind of thing. But yeah, so I just thought that was fun, and we would share that out. So write in if you're watching or listening, and tell us which Bill Murray character represents you. It doesn't have to be where you live or whatever, but which representative of Bill Murray represents you the best.
And where did you find the farmer one? Maybe that'll
You know
help me
what? It
find.
was I didn't make that graph.
Okay,
I
gotcha.
just kind of borrowed that from it was somewhere. Randy Freeze says Quakers. So I guess that that makes sense on there, the Salem Quakers, but I don't know exactly what that character is. So if anybody out there knows what that character is, I would love to know. Now, I got to show you this picture too, because this story is awesome. We all remember J.R. Smith. Love him or hate him, you remember that dude. Now, here's a really cool piece of sports news. I just think this is awesome. So, J.R. Smith is now a freshman in college at North Carolina A&T University. He will be on the golf team for North Carolina A&T. Believe it or not, J.R. Smith came right out of high school to the NBA. And with NIL back in play, I don't believe there was any restrictions on his eligibility. So very cool story. Now, unfortunately, our last memory burned into our images, LeBron kind of looking at JR with like the what are you doing, kind of look from game 1 of the 2018 finals. But overall, JR Smith, he was a fun player and honestly had a lot of unheralded great moments for the Cavs in that playoff, those playoff runs of the late 2010s. So I thought that was really cool. I wanted to share that. And then we're just going to get to a few more just random news and notes before we get to our video with Steve Leslie coming up here in just a minute. So I mentioned on Tuesday's show, the Orioles had an 18-game losing streak. They lost Tuesday night, but they were able to win last night to end a 19-game winning streak. And they actually defeated Shohei Ohtani, who might be the AL Cy Young Award winner or MVP this year, which is pretty cool for them. But just a rough season for the Orioles.
Was that the record, by the way, the most leads?
It was the record is held by the Philadelphia Phillies 23 games in a row. Now, do you remember that when the Indians a few years ago, they won 22 in a row? That tied the major league record, which is pretty awesome. But just imagine, how hard it is to win 22 games in a row. It's got to be just as hard to lose that many. Just so many things can go wrong, and or right, whatever it might be. But to lose that many games or win that many games in a row is
baseball
quite
is
the
really a
accomplishment.
mental game. So
It
and
is.
it's probably golf is one of the only ones that are more a mental game. But once you got that rolling against you, you're like, can we ever win?
Exactly. The only thing I will say though about baseball is I feel like baseball doesn't quite have that carryover momentum that football or basketball do, at least in the main sports, because it's a new starting pitcher each day. So that new starting pitcher takes out his momentum. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Right.
So
And
in
another
that
thing I
sense,
think is like it used to be that any given Sunday somebody could have won, and now
mhm,
some teams got a little lopsided where if one goes up, there's no way that they're gonna
sure.
pull. But baseball, I think, is a little different. That
Mhm,
if certain cylinders hit in the right order, anybody could win that day. So to have
exactly.
so many in a row go, I mean, you got to be way off.
Exactly. And the season is so long.
Yep.
You're playing every day. You're just going to have an off night, whether you're a good team or a bad team.
Yep.
So, and then a couple quick baseball notes here. Moving on from the Orioles, the Yankees on the other end of the coin have won 11 games in a row to take control of the wild card. Now, I had mentioned too about Major League. The Indians actually had the exact record as they did on Major League in the movie, that 1989 movie, at 60-61. Now they are 61-61. They won last night. Indians, not a bad team. They really are not a bad team. I think they're going to make some noise next year. Now they would have to win. They'd have to go like 30-10 down the stretch to make the playoffs, which is not going to happen. But they're giving me signs for optimism for next year. So I think the Indians for the rest of this year. And how weird is it? How weird is it to say this? The Cleveland Indians will never make the playoffs again.
Yes,
Isn't
they
that so
will.
weird?
Right.
Like the Cleveland Guardians hopefully will make the playoffs next year, but the Cleveland Indians will never make the playoffs again unless they Rachel Phelps it and go 30-10 down the stretch.
Break the lease, move the team. It's in the cards.
Man. So real quick roundup of the just the divisional leaders and wild card leaders. The Tampa Bay Rays, the Chicago White Sox, and the Houston Astros have really separated themselves. They're the division leaders. The Yankees, as I mentioned, have won 11 in a row. They are by far heads and shoulders in the wild card leaders. The Red Sox are in the second spot in the wild card standings. In the National League, the Atlanta Braves, the Milwaukee Brewers, and the San Francisco Giants are clearly far ahead too in the National League. Playoff race. The Dodgers are in the wild card race, but I believe they're like 11 games ahead of their competition, which so they're going to make the playoffs. They could push the Giants in the NL West, but the Dodgers are going to be in the playoffs. And then the Cincinnati Reds, and the San Diego Padres are fighting for that final spot in the National League wild card. So we'll keep you updated on the baseball race as it plans out. But we have a ton of football coming up. We talked again. We're gonna have Steve Leslie on here in just a minute. We're gonna have YSU and Ohio State covered. We're gonna have the Browns and the AFC North covered as well as the rest of the NFL. So just to remind you, this upcoming weekend, the Browns and Falcons will play Sunday night on NBC at 8 o'clock in Atlanta. That's the final kind of tune-up game for the Browns. I'm guessing most of their starters not going to play, but you never know. It's 2 weeks out, and the preseason is really a mixed bag. I saw the Chiefs playing Mahomes. I saw Tom Brady even played a series, but then you're seeing other teams, they're not playing any of their starters. So you never know what you're going to get in the preseason.
It would make sense that if they're pretty solid, if their lines are pretty solid, put it in there for like 1 or 2 series.
Mm-hmm.
Just for the rest.
I agree. Yeah. It's a mixed bag. I'm going to just trust in whatever Stefanski does. And Mike Tomlin has played Roethlisberger. So, I mean, it seems like those veteran coaches are playing their guys. The younger coaches are kind of, let's put them in bubble wrap and save them, for a couple of weeks. So, the Steelers also wrap up their preseason. Now, Steelers actually played 4 preseason games because they played in that Hall of Fame game. And they will wrap up in Charlotte against the Carolina Panthers. That is tomorrow night, Friday at 7:30. So last thing I want to show you guys just before, we appreciate all your continued support of Youngstown Studio. So, you can always watch my show, the 330 Sports Show, right here on Youngstown Studio. Most of you guys probably watch on Facebook, but, I know a good amount of our audience watches on YouTube, some through Twitter. That app through Periscope might be going away soon. So definitely make sure to subscribe on the Facebook and YouTube platforms. Those are going to be kind of our wheelhouse going forward. Our network is all over the place. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. Website, youngstownstudio.com. If you want to go back, we have all of our episodes archived in there, as well as, all of our different shows throughout our network. So it's pretty awesome. Probably approaching 600 shows. I don't know the exact number, but we're close. So yeah, and we're adding talent. We're adding shows. There's so many different shows on our network. So make sure to keep checking in and keep watching. So we again appreciate you guys for doing that. I am going to switch it over now. We have an interview with Steve Leslie that's going to be coming up on the show, and he does a fantastic job. And he's going to tell you all about what's coming up this weekend. Hey guys, Justin Coffin for the 330 Sports Show. We're going to be doing our Thursday tailgate with Steve Leslie here. Steve's going to break down. I'm going to let him tell you about the 5 games he's got picked out, as well as some top performances from week 1. We're going to talk about week 2 here coming up, the week of Friday, August 27th. Steve, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Doing well. Thanks for joining us again, week 2. Still in August, which is crazy for heading into week 2. So
yeah, there's no doubt about that. Week 2 and the heat's been a factor. Go back to week 1, just a lot of cramping, a lot of heat these kids played in. Very good week 1. Some upsets, some surprises, some very close games, some high scoring games. The Ursuline Hartley game was 62-58.
Yeah.
Obviously, South Range played very well and beat a good Springfield team. So some good games, but I picked out 5 for Tailgate Thursday, but I wanted to start it out. There were some big time performances by individuals on teams last week, and I'll try to do that each week and pick out 4 or 5 guys. And the first one, Vinny Ballone, the quarterback at Lowville. Justin, he threw for 416 yards.
Wow.
With 7 touchdown passes.
Wow.
And 1 rushing touchdown. So he was a part of 8 touchdowns. And they were able to beat Columbiana 50-26. So Vinny Ballone is a quarterback that's a junior. Very talented, can throw the football, good receiver. I'll talk about their game a little bit, but that performance for a quarterback to throw the ball the way he did was off the charts. So that's the first one. Second one, TC Caffey from Hubbard, the tailback, broke 2 school records for Hubbard. He had a 93-yard rushing touchdown, which is a school record. He scored 5 touchdowns.
Wow.
And he ran for 450 yards in their win.
Wow.
So he is a fella that has been offered by Youngstown State, talented, hard-nosed, good running back. Play a good Cardinal Mooney team this week, so I'm curious to see how that goes. But congratulations to TC. Congratulations, actually, to all these guys. But TC Caffey breaks 2 Hubbard records, the 93-yard rushing touchdown, and obviously 450 rushing yards. And you look at them, they had LJ Scott, who played at Michigan State. They've had some great running backs in Hubbard's storied history of football, and he's going to be that guy now that chases some of those Hubbard individual records. So shout out to TC. Third one, Brady Shannon, Thursday night. I was able to do that game with DJ. They beat a Hartley team that was a state playoff. Was probably one of the best games I have done with DJ. It was 62-58. They were down, went back and scored and made a good big play on defense. But Brady Shannon had 97 yards rushing for a touchdown and had 5 touchdown passes and threw for 279 yards. So another big-time performance. And I know when we talked last week, a lot of good quarterbacks in our area. We'll talk about a few in the games I will preview this week, but Brady Shannon with a big week. And I go to your place, Boardman High School, Sean O'Hora, Mooney Boardman, great rivalry. Boardman played a great game, win 27-7. Sean O'Hara had an outstanding night on defense. I think he was their leading tackler and also ran for 204 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he was big in that Southside rivalry, and Boardman and Seth Antrim get their first win. So that's the 4th big performance. And finally, the quarterback, Billy Skirpak from South Range, took over for Michael Patrone, who was probably one of the most dynamic quarterbacks we had last year. Skirpak played a lot of quarterbacks last year when Michael was hurt, and he put his name on the map against a good Springfield team. He had 90 yards rushing. He threw for 221 yards and 2 touchdown passes. So shout out to him and a big win over the Springfield Tigers. So I'd like to do that every week. Those 5 young men, the Tailgate Thursday, top 5 performances. So shout out to those 5 for sure.
Absolutely. That's so cool. And, I'm writing down some of these stats as you're reading them off. And going back to the Hubbard running back, TC Caffey, 450 yards. And I don't care who you're playing against. You put up 450 yards. That's Al Bundy-esque in Youngstown lore right there.
There's no question. Those are, when you look at all their numbers, those are like video games.
Yeah.
Those are video game numbers. We talked last week, some talented individuals, some good teams, a good first week. It was great on our end at YSN. We did 20 games and a game on Saturday. We'll have another full schedule this Friday night and Saturday. It was great to see fans in the stands. It really was. And the bands and cheerleaders and the fans to get out and support. And from a YSN standpoint, we still had great numbers. We had over 20,000 each night in viewing. So we're pleased with our viewing, and we're also pleased that high school football is back in Youngstown.
That's so great. Yeah. It's just to see fans in the stands is what it's all about, especially those Friday nights, just so great.
Yeah, it was a nice night. It was a warm night. The 2 nights were warm, but a lot of good games. And we move into week 2, and I try, I'll try every week to promote a few different schools, some different games. Obviously, Canfield's playing at Dover. That's a big game. Austintown Fitch goes to Canton McKinley, a huge game. South Range has a big game at home, but I chose 5. The first one I want to talk about is LeBray and Valley Christian. They're going to play that game at Camel High School, actually, on Friday night.
Okay.
Valley Christian is led by former coach at Western Reserve, Andy Hake. They're 1-0 on the year. They beat Camel 35-6. And if you know anything about Coach Hake's teams, they'll be aggressive. They'll be physical. They'll fly around on offense and defense. And when I looked at them, a big win last week, Justin, they have 8 starters returning on offense. Joey Batista is the quarterback, and Cam Davenport is the running back. They bring back a couple offensive linemen. So Valley Christian is one of those teams we talked about last week that can be that team that can surprise some people. Philip Chandler Cox on the line and Kyle Cornell are starters that return. And offensively, to put up 35 points in their first week was huge. Coach Hake's always been known for defense. He talked about it a lot in his previews. They return 8 starters on defense. He thinks that can carry them through a good season. Sammy Washington and John Trell Mixon are on the defensive line returning starters. Brian Tubbs and Cam Davenport at the linebackers. 2 good ones to watch in the secondary, Phillips Bradley and Raekwon Bell. So Valley Christian's a good football team. They will get a huge test from the LeBray Vikings. And when I look at LeBray, I think they're one of the most skilled and talented teams in our area in any division. Coach John Armini does a great job with them. They're 1-0. They had a shutout last week against Lakeview, who's a rivalry. We talked a lot last week about letter winners. They have 23 of those returning. 9 starters on offense, and it leads with Aiden Stevens. Their quarterback is so dynamic. He's another one of those quarterbacks that are being recruited heavily. I had 1,400 yards passing and almost 900 yards rushing last year. So from a quarterback, he's able to do it all. The ball's in his hand on every play. He's dangerous. And his senior year, I expect a huge year from him. And the big thing with them is Devin Carter's their all-time leading rusher at LeBray High School. So he's in his senior year. Every yard he gains will add on to his school record. I had him on a player profile last year. Great young man, talented, also being recruited heavily. So you look at them, and their receiver is Trayvon Drake, big, tall, skilled receiver. They have three of the best skilled guys in our area and an explosive offense that can score a lot of points. But I think their key is defensively. They return 8 starters. And their 2 leading tacklers are Sean Miller and Stephen Hemberger. So LeBray, talented. Valley Christian coach Hake, looking for that big signature victory. I picked that game. It's at Camel Friday night. I think it's one of the under radar games. 2 talented teams, 2 very good coaches, and I think that's going to be a heck of a ball game. But Valley Christian will have their hands full with a talented LeBray offense.
Okay, very nice. And that Campbell High School,
a great facility.
Stadium. Yeah, it is a very, very cool.
Old school,
very cool.
New turf. The stands are new. They've done a great job there. They let Valley Christian uses it. I want to believe. So I believe that's where the game at. I think Valley Christian may have played at Struthers last year. I'm not sure on that, but great venue, great atmosphere. Another game we're looking at Friday night, Camel and Lowville, the Battle of the 289. Haven't played in a long time. You look at Andrew Mamula as the head coach at Lowville. They win 50-27. We talked about Vinny Balone and these numbers. Last year, he threw for almost 2,500 yards passing.
Wow. And
had 34 touchdown passes. So what he did in week 1 was a pretty good view of what he can do the rest of the year. Vinny Lako is a talented running back. But the combo of Brady Bonoski as a receiver and Vinny Balone may be one of the best in our area. Brady Bonoski last year had almost 1,000 yards receiving. He had 984 yards and 10 touchdowns. So those two love to hook up with one another. They did it quite a bit last week against Columbiana, moved the ball kind of at will. And when we talk about all these good offenses, the line's the key, I think. And they returned 3 linemen, Kyle Miller, Anthony Lucido, and Max Jones returned for them on the line. So Lowville looking to go 2-0. And against a big rivalry defensively, they want to continue to improve. I think they gave up 27 against Columbiana. I'm sure Coach Mamula will want to see that improve. And when you look at them coming in September, they'll play a good Springfield team. So this is one of those games, if you're Lowville, you want to get that W and get to 2-0. Camel, Andrew King, first-year head coach, lost to a good Valley Christian team. Last week, 35-6 was a rough game for them. Working on 2 guys at quarterback, David Moore and Aiden Velasquez, trying to get the quarterback position ironed out. 30 to 35 kids on a team, so that's a tough number for coach.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's tough to practice with and those types of things, but in his first year, very excitable, has coached at some great places, was at Poland. I expect big things from him. 3 offensive linemen they lean on, Brandon Applegate, Ben Ortiz, and Malachi Taylor are 3 guys on offense that had good games. And Dylan Henderson also running the ball. He's one of their skilled athletes. I look for them to try to get the ball him a little bit more. It's going to be a big test for their defense. When you have Balone and Bonoski and you put up that many points in the first game, the ball will be up in the air a lot. I expect it to be a long game. That game could be one of the longer ones with the clock stoppages, but I wanted to signal that out. It's a big rivalry. They haven't played in a long time. Shout out to those 2. And I think that's another great game in our area this weekend.
No doubt.
Next one, I just talk a little bit about it. Dover and Canfield. Canfield beat a very good Poland team. Dover is a state perennial power every year. They play one another every year. Coach Pav looking to go to 2-0. And they had great contributions last week. Brock Lowry at the quarterback, Toby Smith had a great game. Nick Bowen led their line. I think that's a big-time game in our area. Dover's undefeated. We'll run a spread offense. They throw it. They can run it. Coach has been there a long time. Coach Pavlansky has a great relationship with the Dover coach. I'm curious to see how Canfield reacts after a big win against Poland after a rivalry. I think those extra days will help.
Yes.
They played on Thursday, so a couple extra days rest, but that's one of the bigger games in our area. I know I previewed Canfield a little bit last week, but Toby Smith had a great game on the defensive end. Brock Lowry was huge. A couple rushing touchdowns, threw for a couple, and their defense was solid in a big win over Poland. So that's the third game that will be previewed, and it's going to be a good one.
Have you been able to talk to Coach Pav this week at all?
I did. I actually just got done with him tonight. So on Wednesday night. So for the show here on Thursday, fans can listen. Very confident, but thought there were some things that they can improve on. Talked about how dangerous this foe is. And if, this is a playoff type team. And if you rest on, he was talking about if you rest on last week's win, you're going to lose. So I'm curious to see how they come out. They're coached well. Coach Pav's one of my favorites, and that's going to be a great game. We'll have it on YSN Live, and that's one for fans to definitely watch.
Yeah, because, I know him and his brother were both saying, they're not winning the game on the field. It's the players. But, you still, at the end of the day, you're putting your heart and soul into that, and you worry about a little bit of a letdown because those players know how much it probably meant to them as well.
Yeah, there's no question about that. I talked with him about that. Hope you can enjoy the preview there. And we talked about it. His brother Tom and him, and his mom did the coin flip. He talked about how special it was for their family from out of town to, after the game, give one another a hug. Obviously, you want to win, but both of them were able to spend the rest of their weekend with their families. And from a competitive standpoint, that's awesome that two great coaches like that can put football away for a couple days and enjoy family. But that was a great atmosphere. And a shout out to Poland High School for the way they had the game, and they had Mrs. Pavlansky flip the coin. That's a tribute to Brian Banfield and all the folks over at Poland.
Very good. Very good.
Game 4. It's a rivalry game. I picked it out. Beaver Local against Salem. A little, again, in their neck of the woods, a rivalry. Coach McKenzie over at Beaver Local, they lost. They're 0-1. They lost to Indian Valley 37-26. A talented football team that can score. I think on their end of it, they returned 5 starters on defense, Wyatt Loy and Nate Sprouse. I think Coach will get to work this week on the defense. Obviously, gave up some points offensively. Justin, I thought they played pretty well. They started fast. I think they had a 14-0 lead. They have 8 starters on offense. Caleb White is one of those skilled athletes. He'll do a little bit of everything for him. And 3 starters on the line of scrimmage, and Zane McCoy, Wyatt Loy, and Micah Sturm. So I think Beaver Local is one of them teams that play a tough schedule. After a tough loss, now they'll head over to Salem. And you look at Salem, and when you talk about them, Ron Johnson's the coach. I want to say, Justin, this is the biggest amount of letter winners I think I've read. 37 returners.
Wow.
For Coach, which is huge. You look at them last year, they had Poland into the 4th quarter in the playoff game. So a lot of big things to expect from them. They're 1-0. They beat Crestview 38-13, and Crestview is a talented football team. 9 starters return on offense.
Wow.
And it starts with Coach Ron Johnson's son, Jackson Johnson, last year. Threw for almost 2,900 yards passing, had 1,000 yards rushing, and 30 touchdown passes. So he is the guy for them. Great running back in Jason Austin with some younger guys, getting him some rest and some time as he plays some offense and defense. We talked about the combo. We talked about Balone and Bonoski. Here's another one, Jackson Johnson. Blaze X-Line last year, and you'll appreciate this number when you write it down, had 112 receptions.
Wow.
Yeah.
You don't see that at the high school football level.
No, not at a high school. 1,345 yards and 19 touchdowns. So those numbers are off the charts. When you return that many, Justin, your offensive line is good. They returned 4 starters. I love the two twins, Kirsten Stockman on their line, lead them. It's just one of those teams that's under the radar a little bit, but talented, and I think could make a long run because they return 9 starters on defense too. Their 3 leading tacklers return: Jackson Johnson, Dylan Monroe, and Damon Wolf. The 3 leaders in tackles with 6 other starters. That explosive offense. A great head coach in Ron Johnson, who was a head coach at Canton McKinley. That's a great rivalry. Beaver Local and Salem. We're proud to be a part of both of those football programs at YSN, and that was another game that I highlighted. I think it's going to be a great game and a game where I think you'll see a lot of points scored.
Very good. Very good. Yeah. I saw a little bit of the Salem Crestview game from last week, and that quarterback can really, really throw the ball well. And he's a lefty, which is not traditional. You don't see that a whole lot anymore. So
right. You're not used to seeing it. If fans get a chance to check that one out, he's a talented young man. They're coached well. It's a talented team. So as that 4th game that I highlighted, that'll be a good one. And the last one, this is a dangerous one for the Springfield Tigers. They're going to play Brookfield, who Brookfield is coached by Randy Clark. They're 1-0. They went to McDonald last week and beat McDonald 35-6.
Wow.
Justin, I cannot remember many teams that have gone to McDonald and beat Coach Williams 35-6. 8 starters on offense return. 2 offensive linemen that are talented. Lucas Beckenstein and Connor Heater. Tiandre Craig is a running back. Donovan Pulowski at quarterback. They controlled that whole game against McDonald offensively, ran the ball very well. O-line played good. I expect them to be a threat to the Springfield Tigers. They returned 9 on defense. The player to watch, they're saying at linebacker is A.J. Bartland, and a DB Isaiah Jones and Cody Hoover on the D line. So a talented Brookfield team will host Springfield, and Springfield lost Coach Guerrero. It happens. They played a talented South Range team who played very well. Skirpak, the quarterback, had a great game. And Dylan Dominguez on the ground. They were able to run the ball against Springfield. I expect Springfield to go back and work on some things and correct things. Bo Brungard will be back to his old form. And I think the biggest thing for them, Jacob Joyce, Nick Slyke on offense, need to get that offense going again a little bit. I expect better things from Bo Snyder at the running back position. I think that's the key. And for them, I think it's just getting guys more experience. They lost quite a bit on the O-line and the D-line.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they will be that team as the year goes on. We'll get better every weekend. Come end of the season, we'll be that team that can be one of those state contenders. Was surprised at the score, not going to lie, but Coach Yeagley has a great football team, and that's a team to keep your eye on. We talked about them last week. So that's game 5 and a good one. Some other ones, Easton Harding, Mark Asen at East got his first win. Harding had a tough loss against Medina. So that's a good one to watch. So a lot of good games in the area. Cheney and Boardman, the Battle of the West Side. Seth Danstrom was coached at Cheney with Chris Emile. He's going to head over to Rand Stadium. And while I'm talking about that, I want to bring up Jason Hulett, the talented junior who's been recruited by all the big-time schools. Had a terrible injury against Austintown Fitch. Had surgery a few days ago, broke his tibia and fibula, is out for the year. A lot of coaches I talked to, it could be anybody's player. It could be anything. Those are devastating for all our coaches, all the players in our area. I just wanted to shout that out to you, from myself and all of us at YSN. And I know what you guys do at 330 Sports. To Jason Hulett and his family, prayers. And he's a junior. Get better every day. Get bigger, faster, stronger, and get ready for that senior year.
And no doubt, because especially with what they can do, with surgeries and whatnot now, he's probably gonna be back stronger than ever. And that I appreciate you shouting him out, because we all wish that. That kid,
it's these
recovery.
kids. Yeah, these kids go out and give it their all and put the time in, and one play, But Coach Emile's an awesome person to have as a coach. He's there for him. When I talked to Coach Pavlansky, he talked about it. You don't want to see injuries like that. I talked to Coach Antrim this week who had him as a player last year and told me he found out at halftime at a Mooney Boardman game and he was devastated. It was kind of a devastating thing in our area, one of the top tier players being recruited by everybody. But from what I understand, a lot of these schools are honoring their offer. And that young man, I know his family and his older brother will work harder than anybody I know and will be back bigger and stronger.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. We wish him all the best. And, and Steve, we thank you for all your insight.
It's my pleasure.
I know you're with YSN, but we have this nice partnership here with Youngstown Studio, 330 Sports Show, and you guys. DJ was on one of our programs yesterday, and you guys are doing a great job, and we thank you for doing this each week, shouting out these individual performances as well as these teams to watch. And I think you got Trumbull, Mahoning, and Columbiana County represented.
I try to get a little bit of everybody. You obviously don't want to stay with the same teams and games this week. Hubbard and Cardinal Mooney is another big game. TC will have a chance to do some big things, but we appreciate you. We appreciate the partnership. Like I told you, we enjoy watching 330 sports shows. That's one of my favorites to watch. And I appreciate you having me on each week to talk sports, and look forward to every week getting these kids some recognition like you do and like we do and like all these good places that we cover. They support YSN, and DJ and Brian do a great job, and we can't thank them enough.
Absolutely. And one more thing real quick before you go, Steve. We're going to have you and Bob Hannon live in studio next Tuesday night. That is, the date is escaping me offhand.
I want to say September 1st.
I think
it is September 1st.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Because the third,
you know what? Actually, It's August 31st. It's August 31st.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm. So September 2nd is the YSU Open.
Yes.
No, I look forward to that. I really do. I told you, Bob Hannon is one of those guys that I learn an awful lot from for what I have developed a love for to do this and interviews and call games. And he's taught me so much, and we enjoy sitting down with you, and we'll start diving into the Penguins on Tuesday night for sure.
Very good. Well, Steve, you got all the bases covered, and we can't thank you enough. So we'll talk to you next Tuesday and next Thursday. So you're doing double duty on our show.
Double duty,
so.
Yeah. and thanks for all the support you give us. Fans YSN will have all the games, ysnlive.com. We'll be free again this week. We look forward to another big week. And Justin, thanks again. We'll talk next week.
Sounds good. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy the games you're calling.
All righty. Thanks, you, sir.
Steve.